Okay. All right. So this is where we had left off, and this was a new article that I just came up because what I usually do is to, uh, keep scouting for the news item in science feeds on the topic that I'm looking into. And so this was reminded me of and this was, you wouldn't think that Nature magazine has sense of humor, but they do apparently. And this was actually the title of this recent article about these feet are made for. So I'm sure most of you remember this song, And this last time we finished with the topic of smell and taste. And you would not think that taste receptors can be on the feet, but they play. This was actually an undersea, uh, some type of a robin type of fish, So name is academic, but that actually has receptors on the feet. Okay, and this was just not a guess, but they duplicated this in a fish tank with, mussels and amino acid capsules, and the fish were able to find these items and dig them up with the feet. And close look at they showed papilla, which are taste receptor molecules, and which was specialized in various amino acids and chemicals. So this was just mind-boggling as to how, and for the biochemist amongst us, this has something to do with where other fish have transcription factors. Don't even worry about that unless you're a geneticist or biochemist. So that this was used as a taste receptor. So it's just amazing how nature uses same facilities in different. Oops. Okay, I'm going. Okay, I think Mike is still a persona non messing in action, so I feel bad about it, but I think okay, and so this is now the two other senses, the main ones that we have to address are sound and ears and touch, ideally. So this is now on one hand, sound is kind of similar to touch. Now you can say, wait a minute, really? Sound is similar to touch? In the sense that they are both mechanical senses and they rely on electrical impulses, unlike the uh, eyes, where the protein is chemically converted and changes its what they call conformation. So in other words, we are extending our range, by hearing. And so and again, this is how, evolution is conserved. That was a fascinating thing to her. Now, like a lot of senior citizens, I watched Jeopardy to enhance my repertoire. And last night clue was this. Okay. So if anybody who's a fan can try to answer this. Okay. Anybody wants to take a guess what this word was in Aztec language?
Armadillo?
Yep, got it. Hey, yes, you're right on. So my wife got it, and I, yeah, I couldn't think of the name, because I mean, I didn't grow up here, so it was. And now the one thing as to how interconnected the word is that armadillos can cause a disease. Does anybody want to chime in what disease it can cause in humans?
Leprosy.
Leprosy, yes, absolutely. Okay, yeah, I think as a physician, yeah, I would expect you to know because of cold-blooded. So this is, yeah, but it was a surprise that yes, kids can cause. But I mean, I'm sure you'd have to have a prolonged contact, But that was just a side note, And this again, one thing I missed about, how uh, we were talking about taste, and one point that I was going over my slides, and again, then there is something called human mono-oligosaccharides. Okay, now human means it's come from human source. In babies, newborns case, is the mom. Okay, so the oligosaccharides are types of sugars, the simple sugars. Those are, no, obviously they're in the breast milk, but the baby does not have the enzymes to digest it. So there's a microbe inside baby's gut. That is the one that actually breaks it down. So how the convergence of collaboration between your gut microbes, which are the good microbes that help the newborn, and that just improves the immunity. And so right from the bat, this mother's milk, which has this that improves. So it's an example of codependence on microbes. In one hand, the few of them can cause parasitism and leprosy. The other ones can cause this. Okay, now this is, a type of a wasp that you see. Okay, and it does not stand for it does not stand for white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, but it's a real, uh, wasp. Now, because we just went over Halloween, I thought I'll put this in. This is what it does. Okay, this has a sting and has two separate stings. This is almost, too gory, and I should have given warning. It has two stings. With one sting, it paralyzes the cockroach, and with the other sting, it directly inserts a sting inside the brain of a cockroach. Okay, so the cockroach literally becomes a zombie. Okay, and then passively follows to the insect's nest, and then the insect proceeds to lay egg inside the cockroach's live body, and so there is a nice meal for their new eggs as soon as they hatch. So it just reminds me. I mean, we were in Wisconsin when Jeffrey Dahmer was caught with the killing that he did. He actually did the zombies. So I thought this was
Oh,
appropriate thing for Halloween, so as to how one life form is interdependent on others. So this was, really a gruesome story, and there is actually, this is an article in the New York Times, and I think this is the link for those who want to see nature in wild, in tooth and raw. Okay, so that's the click. Okay, and this was not, I mean, just I think 3-4 years old. Okay, so this is, the story for Halloween type thing. So this is, and so ears are useful but not essential, with a simple touch is enough in the class. And no story about senses and hearing is complete without mentioning Helen Keller. Okay, so I mean, so there is enough. And in my other slides, which I did on human senses, I had the clips from her and her whole semi-biography, in which I'm sure all of you are well aware, but so I won't dwell into it at this time, Okay, but evolution-wise, the original insects were deaf, and then gradually ears evolved. And just like eyes that we talked about has evolved about 10 or 11 times in different forms, okay, through the evolutionary tree, ears have evolved even more times. I mean, like here, there, everywhere, type thing to ears, and this will, and insect, there's a fancy word that basically, the sensing apparatus is called chordotonal organs. That's primarily on insects and crustaceans. Okay, and we'll talk more about it, as we go along. So, so, okay, I think I'm going to. Now, this is basically, I ran into a nice video about the evolution. So basically, what do you need? The parts, the components that we need for hearing, basically, first of all, you need cells that would sense this sensation that is coming up, mechanosensitive cells. Then you need touch for drum, or which in Latin is tympani. Okay, so flexible membrane, okay, and then you need a stiff structure to convey vibrations. Okay, so it's just like in a drum. And then vibration structure, sensitive structures inside the inner ear to translate the message. Okay, so this is all about pressure waves, because the energy that is required in air is much less. Okay, so that's why you don't, if you put your hand against powerful subwoofer, you'll feel the energy, okay? But again, if you take your hand away, you won't feel it. On the other hand, in the water, it's different. So the evolutionary, because originally life evolved on water, so fish have a totally different mechanism and need, okay? And so the energy is sometimes absorbed and not, so reflection and other stuff is not so not a linear process. Now, obviously, the vertebrate evolution occurred about 550 million years ago, and then gradually from fish to amphibians to mammals. So, okay, so these are the steps that we went through. Okay, and so we'll talk about each of these as we go along, basically. And this was, how the jawbones occurred, in two different things. So this is reptile, okay, and mammals. So this shows the bony structure. And again, the principle that I wanted to emphasize as to how nature reuses the equipment that she has, okay, and this is in yellow is harder to see, so I rewrote, the part of the jaw. The varieties of bones that were part of the head skeleton, skull skeleton, have been reused and reconfigured to make your ear. Okay, they and other species, the names are different, but what they ended up being was the three classical bones that we are familiar with: the ilius, incus, malleus, and stapes. The stapes we'll get to in just a few minutes. So and they evolved from the other bones that were named, based on the shape, quadrate and articular. Okay, so that's how they went on to, and again, so how, there are other stronger bones which are part of the jaw, which is where the sinuses went on to. Okay, let me answer the phone call, please. And I think if you want to pause the recording, Frank, because Mike is trying to call again. Hello. Hi, Mike, folks. Yeah, I think Mike is trying to. Okay, so we can take off where we go. Hopefully he'll, this time, third time will be charmed. So, okay, so this is, the general form that nature takes place. And again, the hearing evolved even in, like early fish, lamprey. Okay, you can just see that is a tiny little animal, which is, and the other example is hagfish, which does not have a, vertebrate column, and it just hangs around. And they can be the lamprey can be occur in Great Lakes, and if you're in cold water in winter, it can even stick to your legs. So they're friendly little creatures, and they already have the type of hair cells. You can just see this is the electron microscopy picture. So all the mechanism was there long before we humans ever appeared, or Homo sapiens, any type of and they also had, even in sea, the balance is important. So early rudimentary canals for were already forming into existence. So now, obviously, you can just see there is no outer ear, but somehow along the line, based along the skin and everything else, it was able to receive. Okay. And they also have teeth on their tongue, and they actually just bite, just to give you, where I'm digressing, but teeth on their tongue, and they bite their prey and secrete an anticoagulant, and that's how they get their nourishment. Okay, so these are the earliest development of ear. The later ear development occurred in the sharks, and you can see that sharks have something called pharyngeal arches. So they gulp water from the mouth and remove it from the pharyngeal arches, and manage to get nutrition this way. So this is like the skeletal diagram. And even in the early stages, there were development of the ear had a lot to do with what later on came to be known as pharyngeal arches. So, and the names are, more for veterinary medicine, but so this was the earlier start of hearing apparatus as we come to know it. Okay, and similarly, as the chewing became important, one of the bones, got recurred. There was now sharks have a bone that is called spiracle, and that goes on to develop into, becomes like a stabilizing structure from the throat to the outside, okay, and that forms the what came to be like a canal, okay, eventually, and so the lot of the apparatus that was there originally has been retooled, in front, to create what is known as eustachian tube, which when your ears plug up, that's what, so you see the connection, okay.
Hey,
And
Bharat,
yes, go ahead.
apropos of nothing in particular other than my love of trivia, I just recently saw a supposed real life movie of a shark sneezing. So
Oh. Well, I think, I think there is enough water coming out of the nose.
just thought I'd toss that in there.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's, and but that's just some of the other stuff. Even just today, because one of the advantages of internet is if you look for garbage, you'll find garbage. On the other hand, on social media, it pushes science content to me, okay, because those subjects that I've been looking into. So just, like just today, 2021 article was pushed about uh, a whale with beaks and how it can conduct with infrasonic sounds. So it was just mind-boggling as to how it can travel. So I'll have interesting things about the sounds, so it's like blows your mind basically, and it scared the heck out of the US Navy during the Cold War. But I'm going ahead of myself, but it's a fascinating story that my reference material shows, and obviously there was a real confusion between biology and Cold War. Okay, so these are some of the ears, phase, the modifications. Now, and the mammalian ear has, outer ears, 3 middle ear bones went on to develop because part of the jaw bone was retooled, and then the cochlea became a lot more because it's become larger, for conducting hair sounds, and kind of looped on itself to save space, and unique hair cells developed. And I think just for the biochemists amongst us, this is the fancy thing about this is a protein, which I have, obviously, this was not taught when we were in medical school. It's a new finding about, a specialized protein, and with the ion channel, this is names are the sodium ion channel that has been described, and that is the big part of the conducting the mechanical force and the motion of the hair waves to electrical signal. So this is the new latest finding, and we can just find a whole slew of articles on this, Preston, which it's and I'm sure that you need to be really a PhD and into big biochemistry to be interested in it. No names here, Peter. That's your assignment. Okay, so this is okay. This is really a grad level things, and I think these are related with so-called molecular motors, and I think I might have, probably I didn't show the slide about the molecular motors, but this is how, and OHC is the outer hair cells, and that has to do with, and this is, I'm sorry if I can see, if I can zoom in, these are the OHC. So once I magnify the inner hair cell in OHC, so that's what it means, the hair cells. Now, this is what causes the deafness because it's only a finite number. Once they're gone, they're gone. So if you listen to hard rock when you're a teenager, you're paying the price for it at a younger age, And I have a cousin who actually was in a band, and at age 40, he has hearing loss. So this is, and we cannot, unlike some other lower animals, we cannot regenerate, sound. But so this is the precious thing, and people are doing genetic engineering, like with CRISPR type thing to regenerate hair cells, but that is still very, very experimental at this stage. So we won't dwell into it, So there is a lot of fancy thing that's written about this particular type of protein, but that is, I don't think most people would. And so this is something altered with anion transfer protein related. So if you remember that, that's good enough for most of our purposes, Okay, for those of you who are more curious. And there are some other more gory stories, type of thing that, okay, this is a tiny fly. Now, you can imagine that this tiny fly has ears, okay, but it does apparently, okay, and are separated only by 1 millimeter. Okay, so the sound arrives in both ears more or less at the same time. But the fly evolution has developed a special way of hearing. They're connected by, like a very rigid structure, which amplifies the smallest differences. So literally like a directional microphone. Okay, and in fact, there is a big thrust nowadays on something called biodesign. So some of the fancier microphones were inspired by this type of design. And this again, this is, nature in wild and raw. This little thing, it's lays eggs inside the cricket. Okay, and so and the brain, has like the only purpose of the brain is find a cricket basically. Okay, so this is how it goes about. You can just see it's a tiny little fly. Okay, and parasite fly and it's cricket. Okay, and now this has nothing to do with it, but hopefully this will play. No, I'm sorry, this video won't play, but a female on a treadmill type thing. So there was actually the science people had devised a treadmill for this little fly. But so there you go. So okay, and it's an okay, going forward. Okay, now this again, the flesh-eating, the parasite maggots are the offspring of the fly, so this fly was becoming really invaded the Hawaiian Islands, from from North America. Okay, so this was like a struggle for existence, literally was going on between the crickets, and so the crickets were making the noise, and the flies were able to hear it. Okay, they were following the chirps of the cricket. Okay, so Ed Young has almost a whole page for this in his book. Okay, the flies were following the little sounds that the crickets make and deposit the eggs. So this is the fastest example of evolution. The crickets evolved to stop making the sound. Okay, all right, and that's obviously survived. So this was a single mutation that took place inside the cricket. Okay, so their wings developed, the chirp basically. And what happens with that mutant? How did they breed? Some of them had survived, basically, so they're silent like the females and cannot chirp to attract the males. Okay, so this was a good example of, the mutation that took place right in front of the people who were studying their eyes, basically. So it's like how the race just went on between two little critters. And again, the frequency range, it varies quite a bit from, it's extensive from, frequency is measured in hertz, Hertz, okay, while on the other hand, loudness of sound is measured in decibels, okay. So the frequency is, obviously, you remember the classical wave, that's the light frequency is, the same way when we talked about it when we showed the, spectrum, visible spectrum. The same principle applies here. And so the frequency ranges from, we are talking about thousands of times. This is a logarithmic scale, okay, and basically, so it starts from low end from 2 all the way to 20, kilohertz, and that's the human range, okay, and so but some of the animals have, a lot more harder, a wider range from infrasonic and ultrasonic. So at both ends of the spectrum, we are, as humans, we are somewhere in the middle, okay? And at the same time, we may give credit to some of the large cats, but their hearing is not as good as we think it to be, Okay, so they use the other senses, so that can be called as a cross model sensing mechanism that comes into play, because they would use all sorts of other senses, such as vibration on their whiskers. Okay, and so when we talk about touch, we'll get more into it. Okay, and then again, the shape of the ear has a lot to do with it also. I mean, the outer ear didn't evolve just so that we can put our glasses on. Okay, but it actually, reroutes and reverberates the sound, so it helps us localize. As the sound waves propagate, the first a certain amount goes through the canal, but then sound waves are reflected by the pinna of the ear and the notch that is, the tragus that is on your ear. And that again, helps you localize the sound. So the shape has really a, actually anatomical and physiological purpose. Okay. And again, now we'll talk more about it when we talk about echolocation, but the evolution that we see in pets is just amazing. They click almost like 50,000 times per second. Okay. And then again, the sound is reflected back, and and in three-dimensional, they try to make sense out of it. And again, at the same time, they're competing with thousands of other bats in complete darkness and able to gorge on insects. Okay. And obviously, they get the bad repute that they are not exactly, all of the bats are not out like Count Dracula type thing. Only one or two species are, but more on that later. But so this is just a graph of the wide range of birds, and again, we can talk at length. We'll talk about this, some of the examples of bird songs, and as to how we are just totally oblivious to it. Okay. And animal talks, okay. Hopefully these videos will play. This is disappointing. Why it's not playing? Okay. Okay, let me see if I can play on this side. Okay. No, somehow the PowerPoint is acting up and cannot play media. So that is something, it's a PowerPoint glitch. So, okay, I'll try to see if I can send them separately type thing. So, okay, sorry about that, but okay. Now, so we talk about animal talk, so there are varieties of sounds that takes place, that part of the pack hunt, as to they're the 4F, it has nothing to do with future farmers of America, but it's feeding, fleeing, fighting, and obviously mating. So the last 4F, you can guess. Okay. So this is, basically, the sounds, howls can be single, loud, not, or long range communication. Okay. And it can travel for long distances, and so the the sound of it can travel for as long as 6 miles, and with a gradual drop in frequency. Okay. And again, marking the territory and communicating with other of their species, are involved in in the hearing that has evolved. Okay, we're talking about dolphins and echolocation. Okay, and yeah, this is God, this is maddening as to why this does not play. Because these are some nice videos of clicks and echolocation. Okay, I think I'm going to stop share and see if I can get it to work. So stop share for a while and going to restart, and because when I tested it out, it worked for me. So.
Did you click on the enable audio when sharing?
Yeah, I think I did. Let me see. That's a good point. Yeah. Okay, enable audio. Okay. Okay, let's see, PowerPoint. Okay, well, let's start again off it. I'm going to start the PowerPoint again and slideshow. Yes, it is clicked. Yeah, so screen 2. Yeah, it was clicked. Okay, I think you should be able to see the slide now. We'll see how that goes this time. Second
Yes,
time.
we can.
Okay, all right. Okay, so that's a blood curdling howl. I think finally this time it worked. Okay, next. Okay, now let's go to the clicks and echolocation. This is the good old dolphin. Okay, and then this is dolphin whistles, sound similar in air and in helium. Okay, and so these are, and there were varieties of experiments were done with different nostrils, and so it's a different sound that's coming up. And there are varieties of calls, like a distress call for the pod moms, okay, from the large and small pods of whales, okay. And there's a variety of cooperative behavior. So it can say this is like an example of collective intelligence, type of thing. So, and when they're in captivity, they end up collaborating with humans as well, so their behavior is different as to comes around, and then at the same time, they can be, a real nasty also. The males can harass the females, so it's almost just like, the bunch of workers, when a good looking woman is passing, the so-called wolf whistles. So that is prevalence even in dolphins. So you can say that either they have social intelligence in one way or the other, So we have, varieties of pitch and sounds that are recorded. But obviously we are limited by our own intelligence how to interpret, so I don't. They may be just talking about says, "Oh, I'm here." Okay, or is it mackerel for lunch again? So there's the communication that goes on that we will never be able to comprehend as to what they're talking to each other. Okay. And now I think this has nothing to do with it, but I couldn't resist sharing this, that, that I'm sure some of you are very familiar with this, but this was the failed experiment that I may have mentioned in the passing earlier. Now, I don't recall when, but the experiment was done by the Columbia primatologists. They took a baby chimp and tried to raise it along with their own family and their own children. And this was a massive experiment with a lot of grad students spending around the clock work, but actually eventually it failed, So language is still, so human ability. So this has to do with speech and how our larynx went down, and so that we could gather. And even just today, there was an article by several mathematicians that given even if infinite amount of time, there is no way it's on the earth, it's likely that a chimp would be able to, because otherwise there is the so-called Chinese room experiment that philosophers have said that given enough time, a chimp can produce a play or Shakespearean play, just based on trial and error. That's how, but that's absolutely mathematically that's impossible. So I just thought that was an interesting item for how the interdisciplinary work has paid out, that it's not likely to happen, type of thing. So this was again, and by in the part picking on Noam Chomsky, the great linguist, this the chimp was labeled named Chimsky. Okay, getting back to the ears, which was our subject basically, and the classic example is barn owl. Okay, and that has an uneven ears. The one is higher than the other. Okay, and at the same time have very sharp eyesight as well. Okay, and they can literally fly silently with subsonic hearing, and the asymmetrical ear, the left, not in, so that helps them locate. And when it wants to attack the prey, it kind of leans forward, swoops, and is able to rotate the head basically, so to get the talons along the long axis of the poor mouse. Okay, and so then, and their ability is just phenomenal. They can hunt and prey 50 feet away under snow, and unlike humans, their hair cells can regenerate. So if we can figure out their what gene is responsible, we would have it made. Okay, so this is the marvel of evolution has take place, and you can see how the cochlea, huge cochlea, there's hearing organ, and this is just the anatomy of the thing, and a lot more details. Okay, and so and then we talk about like if you extend your thumb out, basically the width of your nail is called 1 degree. If you're this is super. The example applies in up vision as well as in hearing type of thing. So, and the barn owls can localize and prey within 2 degrees. So they're better than cats. Even cats are about 2 or 5. Humans we may be about 5 to 10 type thing. So their precision engineering or evolution is just amazing. Okay, and this is hopefully this will play. I think
Kangaroo rats may seem like defenseless prey. However,
it opened on my thing, so I will stop this share and I'll start the other share basically. Oops.
kangaroo rats may seem like defenseless prey. However, their ninja-style leaps are no joke. Research shows that these tiny rodents frequently foil a host of predators through a combination of fast reaction times, powerful leaps, and impressive kicks. High-speed cameras set up by researchers in Arizona captured the rat's ability to evade venomous snakes in as little as 38 milliseconds. For context, it takes about 150 milliseconds for humans to blink. Some kangaroo rats were even seen jumping 7 to 8 times their body height, launching themselves far out of harm's way. Their quick speed is primarily due to their kangaroo-like hind legs and long tails, which allows them to change direction mid-air. Researchers believe that their keen defenses evolved in response to the lightning-fast speed of predators like sidewinders and owls. And as it turns out, these desert creatures aren't just lucky. They're just really skilled martial artists.
Okay, I'll stop the share and share. Go back to my screen to share. Okay, so okay, next slide is here. Okay, so this is the example of here, there, and everywhere here. So this is, these are the little tiny insects called katydids. Okay, Katydid. Okay, they're
Katie did.
okay, and there are, I don't know, and their ears are on the front leg. Okay, just below the knee. Okay, let's see if I can locate it. Praying mantis, cicadas. So you can see in different locations that moth butterflies have ears on their wings. Okay, again, butterflies, moths, they use their wings. We already talk about the little parasitic flies, and these are the crickets and katydids. Okay, so these are the ears on the leg. How and why that happened, I mean, that's beyond anybody's guess. But okay, and praying mantis have on their tongue. We talked about praying mantis earlier, and the ones that come out every 13 or 21 years, their ears are on their backside. Okay, So this is, you know, a marvel as to how that happened and why that is, you know, it may have to do with the morphogenesis or migration of the cells, perhaps, but that gets into embryology, you know, which is not our focus at this stage, you know. Okay, so this is, you know, this revised the very sophistication of structure that evolved, you know, ranging from ultrasonic clicks, okay, to signature songs of the birds, okay, and attraction. So how, and there are, and it, and some of the other and critters have evolved, you know, to attract, you know, their prey, basically, like by imitating the female parts of the cicadas for mating duet. So that's how they have evolved, you know, the hunting abilities. And so these are the different moths have a different way of evolving. You can just see that simple ears on side of their thorax, okay, and just fiber. So all the basic structures are still well preserved. And this is again to save themselves from bats, okay. So this is, you know, a marvel of evolution. That's just the more one reads about it, it's just how this, and again the hair cells and the electrical impulse. So the underlying, you know, anatomical connectivity is still preserved, except in a different location. And the same way the friendly mosquito sound travels in hair molecules of the antenna, and there is something, you know, special that is developed, something called Johnston's organ, that the vibration reaches that, and there are, you know, huge number of receptors. Again, the basic principle of any sensing, if you have the receptors, you have the signal that is created, and the signal it's transferred to electrical property and sent to whatever nervous system the animal has evolved. So basically the underlying principle is preserved. So, but you know, so many different forms have taken place, and you can just see the ultimate aim is converting to electricity, how electricity is at the basis of a lot of it. Okay, and again, these are some of the biggest external ears, bat-eared fox. Okay, and you can just see how these huge ears are not just for decoration and collecting sounds, but this lives in the savanna and deserts, the areas. So it has, you know, surrounded by blood vessels and helps cool the animal. Okay, this the same principle that, you know, that is, and at the same time, on the other end, this tiny little creature, okay, which is a type of a rat, I think, you know, and that no, I'm sorry, that's a tiny animal called bilby, okay, and banner-tailed rat. So the ears are nothing too much to look at, but the internal mechanism is highly evolved so that it can process the sound, you know, primarily night hunters. Okay, so different, you know, parts of the ears have taken prominence as to the external ears, and here the majority of the hardware is on the inside. Okay, and so they have, you know, they have a huge eardrum, and the middle ear bones are large. Okay, so that's, you know, that's how they are able to perceive sound from a huge distances, you know, being night hunters, banner tail rats. Okay, so okay, now the life on the edge, you know. So these are the frogs that, you know, again, the mating ritual is different, that, you know, that's classified as whine versus chucks. Okay, and these are different sounds. So hopefully I have the video that I can play, you know, if it works, but somehow it likes to play on my other monitor. Okay, so this is, you know, now the two types of sounds, they are called whines and chucks. Now the whines will not attract the mate, okay? So but the chucks will, okay? But there's a price to be paid for it. If you create more chucks, you know, you may get lucky, but at the same time, you're, you know, may end up being a bad lunch, okay? So there's a trade-off that takes place between reproduction versus survival, okay? All right, so let's see if we can play the video, hopefully. Yeah, for whatever reason, it wants to play on this computer, but let's see. I think it's worthwhile playing, so we will do the dance, as we call it. So that's, you know, so you got the, okay, so you got the idea. Stop there. Okay, they share 2, share. Yeah, I don't know why it makes me go back and forth, but there you have it. I can't. PowerPoint has its own mind. Okay, so hopefully we're back on screen 2. Okay. Just a second, I have to. Okay, all right, so now we're in business. So we already played this one. And okay, and these are the zebra print sounds. Now, for us, it's just basically noise, you know, but this is so precisely timed, you know, it's like 1 to 1.3 milliseconds. So they can create as many as 500 to 700 clicks. And these are complex songs that we cannot perceive, but, you know, when they're played in slow motion, you know, people were able to perceive tiny variations, okay, not in pure tones. And there was like a complex uh, uh, auditory potential that they were evoking. So the songs were different when they were either trying to mate during spring time, is for mating, versus when they were in a group. And these were influenced, the sounds were changed based on their sex hormones. Okay. So this is, you know, it was a lot more complex thing that is beyond our comprehension that takes place in the sounds. And people have recorded them and played them at, you know, with a different processing mechanism that they've done to be able to decipher as there's a whole subterranean word that is there. Okay. All right. And this was, I think this one was more fun. Hopefully I can play it.
Florida has a dangerous abortion ban with no real exceptions for rape.
Okay, I have to change again. Oh, this is bizarre, but I'll try it. It's worthwhile doing it. So that I thought that was interesting how the bird is able to successfully steal and get away with it, you know, scot-free. So, okay, let's see if I can get back. Okay, that's not what you want to hear. Okay. And now for something completely different. I cannot have a talk without mentioning the Monty Python line. Okay, so this is, you know, this is a monkey who's in Southeast Asia, a proboscis monkey. Okay, and this is basically it's the biggest nose that you can see. Okay, it has an alarm nose that swells up because it acts as a sound chamber. Okay, when it hears, especially when alligator or crocodiles, you know, are so when the species is in danger, that's when the nose gets big and really works like a megaphone basically. So this is swells up type of thing. So okay, so this is one way of, you know, the species has evolved a different organ for a different purpose. One would not associate nose as an amplifying chamber, but there you have it. Okay, and you can just see how this were, again, obviously I played this video, but I think that may be limited by copyright or something. So this is you get the general idea as to how the nose has evolved. Okay, and at the same time, we already talked about the cicadas. Okay, and how their hearing organs are on their abdomen, or the other ones have their on their legs. So it's an altogether different. Okay, and again, the deer, that they are able to alert, that there's a total survival depends upon their hearing. Okay, I mean the smell can be confusing sometimes, and because of wind it can change, so it can alarm to different frequency, and they have exquisite hearing that they have evolved, and at the same time they're smart enough that only the strange sounds that they will get, they will take off. For example, like a human car door opening or a footsteps of a human being, but a wind rustling and other noises, they just have learned to make a difference between them. So it's an altogether, so how they have evolved their ability to be able to distinguish even among the sound as to what the source likely. So they're alert to the new changes that would take place. Okay, and that's why the big games, their success rate is at the most 1 out of 4 or even less sometimes. Okay, and again, which I think I may have a slide for elephant ears later on. Okay, and they have the ability, first of all, their
Ron,
ears
you're not sharing your slides.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was. Yeah. Okay. It didn't click further. Thanks for pointing it out. Yeah. Okay. You got it now? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Good. Okay. Let me go back to one more, and I think. Okay. So you were able to see this nose, the big nose?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So I don't know why it disappeared, because I didn't change anything. Okay. Anyway, but that's the quirkiness of. Okay. Let me move my taskbar so I can click when I want to. Okay, so we already talked about that, and the deer, they have safe, their survival depends upon their hearing ability, and they are alert to new noises in higher frequency, and they're able to distinguish between which is a totally alien sound versus a new one. Okay, now the elephants have a different type of problem. Their head is huge, so they cannot rotate their head as quickly as a deer would, type of thing. So they've developed, a totally different ability for this large ear, and able to, their range is a lot different than, so they can detect, the low frequency rumble. At the same time, they can not only just rely on hearing, okay, because here you cannot just turn your head that quickly in the direction, but they can also detect vibration and sound with their trunk and their feet. So that way they are able to detect their herd, members of their herd, and at the same time they can detect the presence of thunderstorms. And that's very important when they're living, because the water is very important for their survival. So that's how they're able to, so again, they're using multiple modalities to make sense out of the word. Okay, and this is, the infrasonic sound, which is in a very low frequency, 20 hertz cycle, so which is below our range. Various big animals have evolved this, like whales, elephants, rhinoceros, okapi, alligators, so they're, they can communicate over hundreds of miles. And this was, and this was again, this discovery was made sometime in 1984. So they're able to converge on the same location from different directions to get access to water. Okay, so that was, the mystery or a benefit of infrasonic hearing. And these are the two classic examples. You can just see how, okay, and the whales, and the story that I shared with you a little while ago, that during the Cold War, the Navy has a separate, very secret system called SOUS system, which they were able to detect sounds for enemy submarines, basically. Okay, and they were detecting this low hum type of sound. Okay, so they were just scratching, their head. Russians have developed some, capabilities that we are not aware of, and this sound was with low frequency 10 hertz sounds that they were able to track it down from distance of about 13,000 miles, which is just mind-boggling. And at the end, they were able to find that these were whale sounds, okay, that they were at the other end. And the sound was thought. So finally, and after the end of the Cold War, the Navy was able to give access to the scientists for their equipment, and they were able to do more research with the more sophisticated recording devices, and they were able to find that the whales were not just swimming purposelessly, but they actually were mapping like an acoustic map of the oceans to get down to the breeding grounds. They could travel literally from Ireland to Bermuda and make sense, as to go back to their, feeding grounds. Okay, and this was again so the earlier research that was published when that gave the whole start. We're coming up to 2 o'clock, so I'll stop after this slide. Okay, it gave the whole movement of Save the Whales program started. Okay, and at the same time in 1984, when the researchers were duplicating or recording some of the same equipment, it was used initially in the zoos and later on in African savanna about elephants. So that created the whole book and the movie that was created called Silent Thunder. Okay, and that just opened up the floodgates for saving these two big, large mammals. Okay, so I'll stop at this stage, and then we'll start in about 5 minutes. Because we are actually going ahead of my plan. This thing, so we'll have enough time for next week. Let's put pause to the recording, and then we can meet in about 5 minutes. Okay, thank you. I'll stick on. Okay, it's 5 minutes past, so okay. All right, yeah, so we can stop share, I think. Are you seeing my slide?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, so then I don't have to do another share thing. Okay, so I think we were talking about infrasonic hearing. So I think we are almost coming to the end of the hearing this thing. I may have only a few more examples to cite. Okay, yes, and this is what I talked about, the silent thunder. Okay, so this is the infrasonic sounds, that I already approached the subject. Sound below the human frequency. All adult animals, and they respond 2 kilometers. Okay, so they're listening. They tend to hold their ears outside wide and keep them still. So it's like a rumble in the jungle. So it's like, okay, when we kind of cup our ears when we try to focus, and as to how we can localize in a big crowded bar scene, the familiar sound which we can locate. Okay, and similarly, this was another example of the whale song. Okay, and this was the whole alphabet that was there. So I think just because I have to go back and forth, I'm not going to click on this video because otherwise it jinxes me as to some are playing right on monitor 2. And so they evolved as far back as 50 million years ago, and their outer ears are small, basically, and there's not much to look at, but they pick up vibrations to the bones. So the bone conduction is better. Okay, and then and so we already talked about the sound system with the Navy that took place. So it's just a marvel of evolution over millions of years. Okay, and this was the songs of the humpback whale. Okay, and this was a groundbreaking book. The first recording of a humpback whale sounds were made by a sound pioneer working in Bermuda in the 1960s. And there again, as I mentioned a little while ago, they were listening for Soviet submarines. Okay, and but they use hydrophones basically, and then research has obviously taken off since this thing. And so this was increased the popularity of whales. Okay, and obviously there are varieties of movies and became a very popular cause. Okay, and again these are varieties of calls, grunts, rumbles. Okay, and so this was important enough that it was included in Voyager 2 gold record, that was sent out into space, that was designed by Carl Sagan, none other than him. Okay. And again, so these are, the small tarsier that I showed this picture earlier. There's huge, cute eyes and a big face. And that's, again, indulged into ultrasonic communication. And, and similarly, at the other range of the frequency curve, is the ultrasonic, the throated hummingbird. Now, interestingly, they cannot hear their own sounds, but they still make it anyway. Okay, so that is about 20 kilohertz. So again, you're talking about the logarithmic scale. We're talking about simple hertz versus kilohertz. So we're talking about thousands of times more. Okay. So this shows they can hear in this ultrasound range basically up to 90 kilohertz. Okay. So this is like a totally their private channel that they've created, which is beyond our comprehension. Okay. So we saw as to how the evolution is marvel, and we're still trying to understand. Okay, so we'll move on to the blue. The basic, the most earliest sensation that has evolved is touch. So like the AT&T song, "Reach Out and Touch Someone." Okay, and this is one of the ugliest looking critters that you see. So I think some of you may be familiar with or may have heard about it, called naked mole rat. Okay, and that's rats have a very low lifespan basically, but this particular one is an exception, that it lives on the burrows underground primarily, okay, and lives in colonies. Okay, so it's not just one isolated one hiding out, but like there is, it takes a village, so to speak, so that it lives in groups, and that may have something to do with longevity. And again, living underground throughout, there are no attacks, so that's why they've lost a lot of their abilities. Okay, I think, but they had the same time the lack of oxygen that have evolved. They can live for almost 18 minutes without oxygen. Okay, and they can tolerate a lot more carbon dioxide than you and I can, up to 10%. Okay, so that's that evolution is just. And at the same time, there are fewer pain receptors called nociceptors. Okay, so they're they're insensitive to acid, to the chemical in chili. Okay, cold, pricks, burns. Okay, so they've developed varieties of abilities. I mean, it's just evolutionary one-off, so to speak. So but that's the tiny little creature. So their sensation of touch is not that it doesn't have, but their range has extended dramatically. And there are varieties of other animals also that, and this brings down to the big philosophical questions: do animals feel pain? Okay, and we mentioned in the first talk, that Rene Descartes said, yes, mind-body separation, and animals don't feel pain, and that led to some of the horrendous experiments that I referred to. And in the early days of anatomy, some of the animal dissection that was done, and in the early days of electricity, the research that was done was even more horrid, that would make us cringe now. Okay, where just to show the power of electricity, they had shocked the elephant. Okay, and even like the cadavers were shocked, and that led to the creation of Frankenstein. So, but that's another story, about electricity. But at the same time, now the thinking has changed dramatically. Yes, that even fish, when you go fishing, the hook does feel pain. Their behavior would be different because people did controlled experiments with analgesics like morphine and other stuff, and the fish, instead of going for food, went where they had the pain relief available. So yes, they do feel pain. And obviously, I think, and I think I may have told this many times, so it's a fun story about the early days of neuroscience research and anatomical demonstration in UK, where the Society for Prevention of Cruelty Against Animals, these two activist women went to, like underground into the medical lectures and wrote an essay and published as though, look at there's all these horrible doctors. I think it was Sherrington, and they were doing the early neuroscience research on the dog, and they said they were cruel. And then the fight went on between medical students and and the regular people, and the so-called brown dog controversy that occurred in late 19th century in Britain, and the statue of the brown dog is still there somewhere in London. Okay, so this is okay, but an octopus can actually break off their arm basically if they're in pain. Okay, and they have like and we'll talk more about it in the next class about the so-called distributed intelligence, as to how their nerve they have uh, several million nerve fibers, but a lot of them are on their arms. Okay, that one an arm has each sucker may have as many as 5 to 10,000 nerve endings. So it's like, it's obviously a lot different than our centralized processing that takes place.
May
And
I ask a question?
please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Is pain mediated by the same system as touch? Are they two different systems?
No, they're different. I think we're getting to the channels. I think there are certain things. So there are just give me a minute, because there are two Nobel Prize that was given was different. The pain channel, heat and pain channel. So there are different mechanisms, and pain, pain versus nociceptors, so this is like receptors are different, and pain is a subjective sensation that takes place, so that's called nociceptors, but there are different fibers that takes place, that things. And I didn't put this classical example about the burning too, about Rene Descartes. I think I had it in when I talked about the other, about the humans' senses. But I'll try to find that picture, and bring it next time, Okay. But no, there are different receptors that I think I should have that slide somewhere coming up. And this was another item that I threw in. I just read it recently in July of 2024. So I put that carpenter can amputate the legs of their nestmate to save their arms. So this shows about the collective intelligence that I'm just kind of introducing the idea that how even colonies, an individual ant may not be able to do much, but when put together, they cooperate and their behavior is totally different. Okay, and we can, and there are several examples of so-called swarm or collective intelligence that we'll talk about, as time permits. So, and so the original thought process with animals do not feel pain, but obviously that is not the case, that they will respond to pain. And an octopus, that those who are mean to them will definitely be in pain and will try to get even with them, basically. So they will, if somebody has been nasty to them, they will squirt them with cold salt water. Okay, so they have a memory to get evens even. So, okay, and this is again, we're talking about the exceptions type thing. This was again mind-boggling about the hibernation. Okay, that there is a special type of squirrel called 13-line ground squirrel that's able to hibernate. Okay, and it can tolerate remarkably low temperatures, okay, up to 39°F, okay, and then it enters the nest in October, rolls up into a stiff ball, decreases its respiration, from almost 100 breaths per minute to down to 1 breath every 5 minutes, okay, and can lower the heart rate down to 5 beats, okay. And again, the credit for that has to do with varieties of proteins that were evolved in such a manner. Okay, and that another one that's an Arctic squirrel that can get even further, can tolerate temperatures up to 27 Fahrenheit. Okay, so that's absolutely below freezing as to how it does that. It's a marvel of evolution. Okay, and on the other end of the spectrum, during like an oil well fire and forest fires in California, this was the so-called fire chasing beetles. Okay, they actually run to the fire. Basically, they can sense the fire via infrared, the receptor under the skin. Okay, and they actually go into the charred wood and their legs on it, and lay their eggs on it. Sorry. Okay, and basically, and the reason is because there are no predators. They're safe in that environment. Okay? So there is extreme evolution has taken place as to how different creatures have developed ability to tolerate different climate conditions. And this is what we were talking about as to how the varieties of channels. And this was the Nobel Prize that was awarded to two scientists named Dr. David Julius and another name that I'm going to murder called Ardem Patapoutian, Patopoutin. I think it sounds like an Armenian name to the best of my guess. But they discovered what we call thermal and mechanical transducers. Okay. So this was basically, the chemical in the chili powder. Okay. And so this is the ion channel that was discovered. It's called TRPV1. As to how the standard mechanism that we talk about, the sodium potassium influx, and that is sensitive to heat and pain, and that was responsible for transmission. Okay, so this was very important type of thing. At the same time, various receptors were discovered in the early days of anatomy by various Italian anatomists, but obviously they did not have the molecular basis. So this was to do with mechanical force like pressure. Okay, and this was a different channel that was discovered, so different channel that has to do with, again, ion influx, but it was in a different location as to how the mechanical force distorted the receptors and created the electrical circuit. So these were the two discovered. And the piezoelectric crystal is really important because that's the part of the technology that we have used effectively by various crystals in ultrasound or ultrasonography, which I used for all of my career, basically. Okay, and it has a huge use of medical, but we're digressing. Okay, so these channels, are conserved from bacteria to humans. Okay, and then again, this has evolved differently in two different classes: warm-blooded birds as well as mammals. Okay, all right, and again, depending upon the need, this evolution has taken place. Because obviously, if you're warm-blooded, you need to be run away faster, as opposed to a lot of cold-blooded animals, like turtles versus, a deer type thing. And then again, the varieties of other mechanisms that have developed, and we talked about bats, and they've developed an anticoagulant, okay, which is called draculin, okay, and they have heat-sensitive receptors in their nose. Okay. Similarly, even the lowest insects, such as ticks, have sensors in their legs. Okay. So there are varieties of combinations that are developed in different species. That's the point. Okay. That one would want to make. Okay. Okay, I think there are a lot more technical details which we don't want to get into it. So this is again, the snakes have heat-sensitive membrane in their hands. Okay, and how they're able to, sense the heat as it comes along in their head. So the receptors there in the snakes. Okay, and this is the proverbial bat example that we all been maligned, so to speak. Okay, and cryogenics. Okay, so this is this is the organism that when it's totally frozen, basically from the New Zealand mountains. Okay, it has to basically thaw, with extreme adaptation. Okay, so that has varieties of glycoproteins that warms up as the temperature changes. Okay, so this is basically prevents the formation of crystals in their body. So this evaluation took place almost like 5 million years ago. And they're totally 80% of the metabolism basically frozen. Okay, and at the other extreme, there are creatures that survive in the Sahara. So, huge range of evolution to varieties of temperature and outside condition has taken place at different times in the long evolutionary history. Okay, so you can just see how it's totally frozen and comes back to life. Okay, and again, touch is equally important, not just for making sense of the world, but again, like point forming bonding. And the classic example is the kangaroos. That they're when they live in groups. Okay, so they get each other by rubbing themselves, in groups. So that's how the one gets accepted. Same way in zebras, they live in herds of thousands at a time, but at the same time, there is a small group that forms a little bonding, and the loyalty is to that small group, and they identify or bond with each other by, biting the hair on the neck. Okay, so again, so there are varieties of ways how which animals, survive in groups. Okay, and again, especially when it comes to insects, they have the varieties of sensors on their antenna. Okay, and some of them, and they have hair on their body, which again helps them detect the sensation. So, and at the same time, this, obviously, that bonding is not enough, but at the same time, they are equally well known to fight for mating. Okay, so okay, let's see now. Okay, so this is amazing that they can pick up 500 pounds worth of weight. Obviously you've seen the work animal elephants in Thailand, but at the same time they have huge number of receptors in their trunk that they can pick up object as small as a potato chip. Okay, so it's just the range of or ability and the sensing ability.
Bharat,
Yes, please.
I have a question. This tremendous versatility of the elephants, unlike some other animals, obviously this must have evolved for a reason. But do we have any insights, or has any research been done as to what the elephants evolved from to develop this enormous range of flexibility they have?
Yeah, I think it obviously the original thing goes down to mastodons type of thing in the earlier, in the fossils have been discovered, so their origin, and that's one of the things that they, I don't know if I may not have mentioned in this class, but George Church, who is the big CRISPR guy at Harvard, they had this project for reviving the woolly mammoth. Okay, now obviously, there is no, you don't have the entire DNA available of woolly mammoth, but they want to use part of the genome of Asian or African elephants to recreate woolly mammoth. So it goes back to down to the woolly mammoth era, when the northern part of the Earth was frozen, before formation of various continents. So that goes down to why they evolved such capability as to, that's I haven't researched that, so I can't answer that in a very, very detailed manner. But their lineage goes back to woolly mammoths. That's all I can say. That's what, and I'm sure the one can say is that the number of neurons have a lot to do with it, because obviously the more neurons you have, the better abilities you have, type thing. Obviously, they are per pound, they have a lot larger brain. Okay. And so that, that has a lot. I think, if you recall that showed the number of neurons that people have counted, not just the size, as to, and I just saw a slide about the number of neurons as to how one of the Brazilian scientists have calculated, created a way of how to count actually the number of neurons in an individual thing. So, but their studies is to, because the number that was touted for humans was somewhere like, oh, 80 to 100 billion, type thing, type 100 million, sorry, type of thing. But that has never been documented, it's like it just got carried out in research. So people actually decided to go back. And there's a nice video that I just saw a few days ago from a Royal Institute. Okay. It talks about how the original paper, so her work is credited about how she took samples from different parts and counted the actual number of neurons. And there is a
So,
chart.
sorry. So to me, that raises the interesting question. You
Uh-huh.
know, we developed the big brain and all the neurons we have because we didn't have teeth and claws.
Right.
But the elephant has this huge size. You would think that it could have gotten by with a smaller brain or fewer neurons. Interesting.
Yeah, but Esther, like, but I think that has to get down with, let's talk about that, or let's think about it, maybe other people can contribute if they have better ideas. But Esther, to do with the amount of calories that you can get opposed to and there is some concept that you maybe know about, as to how the body surface area and the amount of calories that you need. Okay, and the same way I gave you the example of last time or time before about the chimps, as to like, they have to eat for so many hours, so it has to. And there is a concept that goes back to, I think, 1930s, called Kleiber's law, as to size of the body versus the size of the brain and the amount of energy that is required. And there's an equation that I can't quote right now is to do with metabolism raised to the size, the 3/4 ratio or something like that. But I think you can look up Kleiber, Kleiber's law, that has to do with the metabolism size and
Spell
the
it again. Kleiber, spell it.
Kleiber, Kleiber's law. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and there was also another English scientist who had done research about the size. His name was called D.R.C. Thompson, D apostrophe R.C.A.R.C.Y. Thompson. And his work was also before the genetics and other stuff became available, about the size of animals and their metabolism, as to how that relates, kind of a mathematical relationship, that they had tried to propose based on, just naked eye observation alone, basically. So those are interesting way of incorporating some basic mathematics to biology. Okay, so hopefully that should give you some head start type thing. So, okay. Okay, so this is, this talks about the elephant behavior type of thing as to why, how they develop such thing. And part of it, I think a lot of the stuff that we talk about is to have to do with group behavior also, as to how the group intelligence developed. And that is something else altogether. But, okay, and now this is, again, an interesting how spider webs, can, and we talked about the jumping spider when we talked about eyes, but generally most of the spiders, they don't have that good an eyesight. Then we talked about the 4 eyes of the spider, where, if you recall, when we talked about vision. Okay, so the spider basically uses web as extension of the touch, basically. So you can just see how they can create around and the spider hair. So it just quietly their eyesight. Most of the spiders have poor eyesight, so they just extend their web and wait for the prey, and they detect the vibrations of something like a moth or something that is fly by, and manage to attract. So this, once it's tapped, then it's all right. So this is that's how they basically get their nourishment. So basically detect vibrations, and again their mating things are totally different, because the females will eat the males. Okay, so the male to mate has to kind of sneak up upon the female. Okay, and so the hairs and vibrations have a lot to do with this. And so hairy scorpion, okay, the biggest scorpion in North America is venom. Okay, so but I think it just basically the claws, and so this is again another way of touch has evolved. Okay. Okay. And these are something called goldfish mullet, so these are bottom fillers. They have like a goatee type of beard, okay, which contain a chemosensory receptors. They probe the sand and reef for food, and feed on worms, crustaceans. So again, the whiskers have a huge, weight basically. So they're, so the other fish will actually follow this goatfish, and anything that they miss, they will eat on basically. So, okay, so this is another way of using the whiskers and expanding their sensory horizon or field. Okay, and this is the master of okay, okay, it's sea otters. Okay, so again, they are, the sensitive paws, and they manage to dive and just, feel with their where they're probing, and just quickly manage to eat, and how they're, this is the normal human uh, homunculus that we talked about in the very first class, but the sea otters are totally different, this thing, because they rely more on their whiskers and their feel that they are able to get, okay, they're able to dive and just touch and pick up vibrations, water currents, air currents, water pressure. So that's their sensory, apparatus that they have evolved. Yeah. Again, the tactile organs, okay, the star-nosed mole, that was the first homunculus that I showed you about, how, this particular area, they have varieties of, like tentacles around, out of which only one is most important. It is relatively short, but still that is like the, like a sharp focus, or to use the analogy of with our eyesight, it is like the fovea. It's equivalent. So to touch, can identify and eat, when it's diving in as short a time as 200 milliseconds. Okay, and they can just dive, identify what their prey is, manage to, and their brain processes the thing as, yes, worth eating, not eating. Okay, and so you can just see that the processing, the evolution is just, better than a blink of an eye type of thing, that they can dive, which obviously they have to go to the deeper area. That takes a certain amount of time. They can only live without oxygen for a while. They have to find a prey, catch and bring it up. So the processing that goes through from the touch to their nervous system is just, lightning fast, to put it mildly. And so how these areas are represented, you can just see the color coded area. Okay, and how number 11, which is that particular much, they're all sensitive, but number 11 is, really like a zooms in on, like a sharp lens, like a focusing the lens basically. So that takes place. So when you look at it, in the same way, the outlet, that has like the crest. So that again, the feathers are sensitive. Okay. And we talked about varieties of tactile organs. This we already talked about this, in more gory details than you wanted to see. Okay. And the same way, mouse whiskers, are exquisitely sensitive in total darkness. Okay. So they're constantly searching as to see what's going on. Okay. And they're feeling out basically their surroundings and trying to make sense out of it. Okay. And that his entire survival depends upon it. I mean, they have sharp hearing, at the same time their vibratory sense is, exquisitely fine-tuned. Okay, because they're mostly nocturnal creatures. Okay, and now this is closer to home. Okay, this is our favorite manatee. Okay, and that has like a, plate on the front. Basically. Okay, and the oral disc, that's what it's called. Okay, it's, again, it's scanning the area. Okay, and it's very sensitive again. And that has different types of, vibressa, which is the technical term for hair. Okay, and at the same time, their eyesight is nothing to write home about. Okay, and they're basically they're moving, and they're, they can feel their areas, like what is worth eating and not worth eating, and they can taste from one side, and if they don't like it, they can spit it out from the other side with the mouth. Okay. And so there's a special word for it. It's called oripulation. Okay. Okay. All right. So manipulations, the word is formed because they're using this plate on their face, basically. Okay. So this is all, and they also use their flippers to grasp the food and bring it to the mouth. But this is the hair on this plate that's exclusively sensitive. Okay, and so this is how, large somatosensory area that has developed basically. Okay, so this is the manatees. Okay, and again, our backyard neighbors, they're talking about alligators. They have these little bumps that people were trying to figure out, on their, the bluish ridge type of thing as to what they are. They're basically pressure receptors. They scan the air-water interface. Okay, and basically, so that's, this is one way of they're able to sense. And then again, on one hand, their bite can be very lethal, but at the same time, a mother alligator can carry their eggs, delicately in the mouth to just to exert just the right amount of pressure not to crush them. Okay, so this is, one other way of evolution that takes place. Okay, all right. Okay, different. Okay, and when we talked about how the sharks have, this touch sensation, something called lateral lines. Okay, so this is, we already talked about how the water enters through the pores, called lateral lines in the sense organ, detect, just the vibrations of, they're flying, they're swimming in a school. Okay, basically, so they're able to sense the position of their neighbor and what the other fish are swimming around. So this is another way that they have extensive amount of sensing that they're able to do with vibration and sensory cells on their body. And similarly, the same sensations that is there in other cephalopods as well. Okay, and so this is called lateral line, and that gets even more sophisticated when we talked about the extrasensory perception, such as i.e. electricity, as when we talk about. Okay, but this was the predecessor. So to avoid the currents and the turbulence, so that evolved further into developing electrosensations. Okay, but more about that later. Okay, because I have a whole slew of, about the special senses. Okay, and this is the lateral line, basically you can just see movements, vibration, pressure gradient, and the cells there's a special name for it called neuroblasts. They are sensitive, and that helps with their schooling and the group behavior. Okay, as you can see how the lateral line canal, the water displacement opening that takes place, it's just slightly below the skin, and how the sensory hairs, again, the basic underlying mechanism remains same. Okay, and this is, the slide from the Encyclopedia Britannica. You can just see how the nerve endings eventually gets activated. Okay, and again, the feathers in the peacock, that picks up vibrations. Okay, and the beach boy picking up new vibrations. They're feeling excitation. So this has a lot to do with their mating behavior. Okay, that this crest has a purpose to it. Okay, and because the peacock cannot see its own feathers, so the crest is vibrating at the same frequency, more or less. Okay, and so the resonance frequencies matches the feathers. Okay, so it can feel its own tail vibrations. Okay, and why it is identical, that's beyond me, I think so. Okay, and these are another tiger wandering spider. So this was one of the more well-researched like a animal test organism in Europe, basically. So basically these are varieties of way different species have evolved sensation and have modified their as we got to quote the word Umwelt. Okay, but sensing the world surrounding them. Okay, and these are the varieties of big animals that also survive on, not just on their, hearing, but also on their, touch. The cheetahs, okay, they hunt, even during daytime. So their whiskers can be as long as their own body length, so they really make a awful use for it, primarily when they're hunting at night, because obviously the vision is okay. And at the same time, other big cats are also known, sea lions and leopards. Okay, so and again they're able to detect the huge amount of information they're able to gather from their surroundings, and at the same time, those who are the sea lions who are underwater, they get their so-called hydrodynamic receptors, so based on which they're able to gather information, hunt, and survive. All right, okay, so I'm sorry, I think somebody was trying to call me. I'll call him back later. I think it was still Mike struggling with it. Okay, and just like we said, we talked about hearing is not complete without Helen Keller. So no animal talk is complete without Sir David. Okay, and let's see, hopefully I can play this new voicemail.
You have 4 new voice messages and 1 saved message.
Okay, let's see if we can, see if I can play this, hopefully in the same. Okay, I'll have to change the share.
In the Amazon live many strange species. This is a tree hopper. They not only have a bizarre appearance, but they also communicate in a remarkable way too. Vibrating their bodies, they send signals through the forest plants they live on. And every sound has its own particular meaning. This tree hopper mother communicates with her young, encouraging them to stay together so that she can protect them. For there are plenty here waiting to eat young tree hoppers. An assassin bug. Armed with piercing mouthparts and sticky front legs. Capable of literally sucking the life out of her entire brood. But she can't guard them all. She needs help from friends in high places. Bees. Very aggressive. This is more than the assassin bug bargained for. Mission accomplished. Her brood are safe. The bees don't protect the tree hoppers for free. A little tickle on a tree hopper's back, and they exude a sugary liquid, honeydew, a sweet reward for protecting them. It's just one of the countless ways in which forest species work together.
Okay, I think that was interesting. Okay, and let me change my share again. Share 2. Okay, so that, it shows the cooperation between different species and a vibration which occurs basically by rubbing wings. Okay, and this was interesting. Again, I would have to thank Ed Young's book. And how many of you have heard of this before from being in Florida? Anyone? Okay, all right. Since nobody has volunteered, I would assume not. Soap Choppy, okay, Florida. Worm Grunting Festival, April. Okay, that is to lure earthworm to the surface. Okay, there are stakes going in the ground, scraping with iron. Okay, so that is, basically, you notice the peculiar listening behavior. Okay, and and that's how it takes place. How they're able to pound the ground and the noise travels and they're able to gather the worms. So this is the festival that takes place in this small town. Okay, and similarly, this has been noticed in varieties of other animals as well. The vibration making the effect. Okay, and we already talked about the elephants as to how they're able to identify each other. Okay, but this is, the worm grunting festival. So I think there's a whole Wikipedia page on it as to how people participate. And this gentleman, is big for, fishing type of thing. They're able to collect huge amount of worms, type of thing. So, okay. And we already talked about the spider web extension that takes place, okay, and how they're able to snare, and this is how they've extended their sensory system or a longer range compared to their size, And same way we have reinvented that with vibration with our cell phones. Okay, all right. So this is, we're just imitating what spider webs have evolved 400 million years ago, basically. Okay. And this is what we talked about, Lawrence Anthony. He was a gentleman who was nicknamed Elephant Whisperer. Okay. And uh, when he died, and he had noticed basically listening behavior and followed them, and he had, researched with them for a long time. Okay. And he worked with them over 13 or 14 years. And when he passed away, the elephants, oh shucks, it's coming.
The new Gel Kayano 31.
Okay, let's see if I can get my share to work. Yeah, this is fun video to see, so I think it's worthwhile going through the hassle. Okay.
We're still seeing the slide
Yeah,
with
I
the
see.
link, not the video.
Yeah, I see. Stop share. Okay, share. Yeah, I have to click it more firmly.
Nerves are the same. What does that have to say about the possibility of mental experiences?
Not the one, I'm sorry, it always clicks on the next one.
Provide the exact same signal if an elephant were able to detect that signal with their feet. Now, a lot of animals do this, but nobody's ever thought about elephants doing this. We've thought about insects, frogs, snakes. But large mammals, no. So what I did was take a call that I knew very well. This is a call that I recorded when elephants were afraid of lions. This is an anti-predator call. And I'm playing it back through a boombox to see if I could help farmers chase elephants out of their fields in the early days of my work. Here comes the matriarch, and she's going to pay attention to these 3 calls here. Now, having had this experience with this call, I know that I have a call that will elicit a strong response. And of course, we don't use this very often, but it's a tool to help farmers keep elephants out of their fields instead of shooting in the air or even wounding them with a shotgun. It's kind of a war zone out there in some places. But what we did was take that same vocalization, cut off all the higher harmonics, and propagate it through the ground, and then see how the elephants respond. So this is all done randomly timed. And what we expect is that they freeze right after the delivery, and they face the source, and then they clump up into tighter family groups, which is a sign of wariness, and then they leave the waterhole much sooner than they would otherwise. Now, what do we take from this? That elephants can detect these vibrations in the ground. Not only can they detect them, they can interpret them as signals. And we did the study again and showed that not only can they detect them as signals, they can discriminate callers. So we used the same kind of anti-predator call from another country, played that back to the ground. They didn't respond nearly as dramatically as they did in the air. So we thought, wow, I didn't expect it to be that sophisticated. So we started to do some anatomical work and look at the fact that they can detect these signals through 2 different pathways. Bone-conducted pathway, this is the malleus. Very enlarged malleus really helps an animal if they're freezing. There's inertia going on where the malleus will move as the body is stationary. Then I'm showing you this foot pad here to show you that actually not much of the elephant foot is on the ground. It's got a really nice pad which helps couple a signal with the ground, kind of like acoustic fat in the dolphin. The elephants can also close off their ears and really create what's called a closed acoustic tube, which enhances bone-conducted signals. And they also have another pathway, and that's through their feet. There's somatosensory cells that are called Pacinian corpuscles, and we all have them too in our hands and feet and other places. And if you look at them, they're like an onion. So when there's a vibration, they shift and send a nerve impulse to the brain. So we went back out and asked Beckham here, our musk bull, to respond to an estrus call. He very eagerly agrees to this, and he's now searching. We play in the air and the ground, trying to figure out how he's assessing his environment, which signal is more important, and how is he localizing it through the air and through the ground. He comes right past the source here, past this brush pile. That's where the speaker and the seismic delivery is. Walks all the way out to the other end of the field, and we wait till he gets to the edge to then present him again with the signal. Sure enough, turns sideways, comes immediately back, directly back to the source, very eagerly looking for a new girlfriend. This is the new girlfriend. He's kind of disappointed that she's only a vocalization, but what he told us was the amount of time he spends assessing the environment in the ground versus in the air, and how we're trying to tease apart now how he localizes those sounds between.
So I think, we're coming up to 3 o'clock. This is almost a 15-minute video. I played half of it. So for those of you who are interested, can look at it, in more details, because I don't want to keep everybody else extra. But, you get the idea. She's the principal researcher, a lady named Caitlin O'Connell, Rodwell. So this was her TED Talk from, it's, I think it's still very valid, but it explains to her about, and it only took her 20 years of working on this. Okay, so science is not easy, as I'm sure the scientists amongst us know this very well. Okay, I will stop the share here. And I think we can stop the recording perhaps, and and let's see how far we have gotten. Yeah, I think we're pretty much on time, so I will share. Okay, go back to my original slides, and okay, so I think we should stop here at this stage and not press our time issue more than I'm allowed to or planned to, actually. So I think we can stop the recording, and